My name is Estelle Morrison, and I'm 58 years old. For 35 years, I've been standing in this same kitchen, preparing meals with love and care. But tonight, as I lean against the counter, feeling an unusual exhaustion settling into my bones, something feels different. The aching in my joints has been getting worse for months now, and I can barely lift the heavy pot I used to handle with ease. My son Marcus just walked through that door with his usual demanding tone, asking what's for dinner, while I'm struggling just to stand upright. After raising him alone for 8 years since his father passed, I thought I knew what unconditional love looked like. I was about to learn there are limits to everything, even a mother's patience. Before I share what happened that changed everything between my son and me, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt unappreciated by someone you love, and subscribe for more real-life stories that show us the strength we never knew we had. Now, let me tell you about the night I discovered just how far a mother's love can be pushed before it pushes back. Let me take you back to how this all began. 8 years ago, my husband Robert died in a car accident on his way home from work. One moment, I was a wife and mother. The next, I was a widow, trying to figure out how to raise our 20-year-old son, Marcus, alone. Robert had always been the one to set boundaries with Marcus, while I was the nurturer, the one who said yes when Robert might have said no. After losing his father, I felt this overwhelming need to protect Marcus from any more pain, so I wrapped him in a cocoon of comfort and support. I work at First National Bank downtown, where I've been a loan officer for 15 years. The job pays well enough to support both Marcus and myself, especially since the house was paid off with Robert's life insurance. Marcus was in his junior year of college when his father died studying computer engineering. I made sure he could finish his degree without worrying about money covering his tuition books and living expenses, even though he moved back home. When Marcus graduated 2 years later, I expected him to start his career, maybe get his own apartment. Instead, he seemed content to drift. He picked up a part-time job at a local computer repair shop, working maybe 15 hours a week, just enough to have spending money for going out with friends. He'd sleep until noon, play video games most of the afternoon, and then complain if dinner wasn't ready by 6. For the past 6 years, this became our routine. I'd come home from a full day at the bank, tired, but determined to maintain the warm family atmosphere Robert and I had always created. I'd cook elaborate meals, do Marcus's laundry, clean his room when it got too messy, and never asked him to contribute to household expenses. Looking back now, I can see how I was trying to fill the void left by Robert's death by being both mother and father, provider and caretaker. But 3 months ago, something started changing in my body. I'd wake up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My joints ached in ways they never had before. Simple tasks like carrying groceries or standing for long periods became exhausting. At first, I brushed it off as getting older stress from work. Maybe the lingering grief from losing Robert finally catching up with me. But the fatigue was overwhelming, and some mornings I could barely get out of bed. Marcus seemed oblivious to my struggles. If anything, he became more demanding. When I'd mention feeling tired, he'd brush it off with comments like, "You're not that old, Mom," or "Maybe you need more exercise." He never offered to help with cooking or cleaning, even when he could see me moving slowly or struggling with heavy pots and pans. The warning signs had been building for weeks before everything exploded. Last Tuesday, I woke up with such severe joint pain that I couldn't even grip my coffee mug properly. My hands were stiff and swollen, and every step felt like walking on broken glass. I called in sick to work something I rarely did and spent the morning on the couch with heating pads trying to get some relief. Marcus came downstairs around noon, looked around the kitchen, and immediately asked, "Where's breakfast? I have to meet Tyler at 2." There was no concern in his voice, no acknowledgement that I was clearly unwell. When I explained that I was having a bad pain day and hadn't been able to cook, he sighed heavily and said, "Mom, you're just getting old and making excuses. Other people your age don't act like this." Those words stung more than the physical pain I was experiencing. I'd spent 28 years loving this child, sacrificing my own comfort and convenience to make his life easier, and this was how he saw my suffering. But I swallowed my hurt feelings and dragged myself to the kitchen to make him eggs and toast, moving slowly and carefully to avoid aggravating my joints further. Even after I cooked for him, despite my pain, Marcus criticized the eggs for being too runny and complained that the toast was slightly burned on one edge. He ate quickly, left his dirty dishes on the table, and headed out to meet his friend without so much as a thank you or asking how I was feeling. The incidents kept escalating. Last Thursday, Marcus invited 3 of his friends over for dinner without telling me. I came home from work exhausted and achy to find 4 young men in my living room expecting to be fed. When I mentioned that I wasn't feeling well enough to cook for a group, Marcus said in front of his friends, "Come on, Mom. Other mothers work full-time and still manage to cook better meals than you've been making lately. What else do you have to do?" The embarrassment burned in my cheeks as his friends shifted uncomfortably. I ended up ordering pizza for everyone and retreating to my bedroom, feeling humiliated and unappreciated in my own home. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Robert and how he would have handled this situation. He never would have tolerated Marcus speaking to me that way, and he certainly wouldn't have allowed our son to treat our home like a free restaurant with maid service. Friday morning brought another confrontation. I was moving slowly, trying to prepare breakfast, while dealing with morning stiffness that seemed worse each day. Marcus rushed into the kitchen, grabbing keys and wallet, and started complaining that I was taking too long. "I told Sarah I'd pick her up at 8:30, he said, checking his phone. "Why can't you just have coffee and something simple ready when I come down? It's not like you have anywhere important to be." That comment hit me like a slap. Not anywhere important to be. I was a loan officer at a respected bank helping families secure their futures. I had responsibilities, deadlines, and people counting on me. But in Marcus's eyes, my job and my life seemed to matter less than his convenience. The breaking point was building, and I could feel it approaching like a storm on the horizon. My doctor had called that afternoon to schedule additional tests. The blood work from my previous visit showed some concerning markers that needed further investigation. When I tried to share this news with Marcus, hoping for some support or understanding, he barely looked up from his phone. "You're probably just stressed," he said dismissively. "Maybe you're overthinking things. Most of this stuff is probably in your head anyway." I felt utterly alone in that moment, dealing with health concerns that frightened me while living with someone who dismissed my experience entirely. The son I'd raised, the child I'd protected and provided for, couldn't even offer basic compassion when I needed it most. The morning that changed everything started like any other, except the pain was worse than it had ever been. I woke up at 5:30, feeling like every joint in my body had locked up overnight. My fingers were so stiff, I could barely turn off the alarm clock, and getting out of bed required multiple attempts and several deep breaths to manage the pain. I made it downstairs and started the coffee, moving like an elderly woman, despite being only 58. Every step was deliberate and careful. I could feel the inflammation in my knees, ankles, and wrists, and the fatigue was so overwhelming that I had to sit down twice, just while preparing Marcus's usual breakfast of scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. When Marcus finally appeared at 8:15, he took one look at the slightly burned toast and groaned dramatically. "Really, Mom, you had 2 hours to make breakfast, and you still burned it." He picked at the eggs with his fork, making faces. "And this coffee tastes weak. Did you forget how to use the coffee maker?" I was already feeling fragile from the pain and exhaustion, and his criticism felt like salt in an open wound. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I'm having a difficult morning with the pain. Maybe you could make your own breakfast tomorrow if you're not happy with mine." "Oh, here we go again," Marcus said, rolling his eyes. "The mystery pain that no doctor can figure out. Maybe you should see a therapist instead of wasting money on medical tests. You're always tired these days." "It's getting old, Mom." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Mystery pain, getting old. This was my son, the person who should know me better than anyone, reducing my very real suffering to attention-seeking behavior. I excused myself and went upstairs, ostensibly to get ready for work, but really to compose myself and keep from crying in front of him. At work, I struggled to concentrate. The pain was distracting, but Marcus's dismissive attitude hurt even more. During my lunch break, I called my doctor's office and scheduled the additional tests for that afternoon. I needed answers, and I needed to take care of myself, even if my own son couldn't be bothered to show concern. The afternoon at the medical center was both frightening and validating. Dr. Peterson, my primary care physician, explained that my symptoms were consistent with fibromyalgia, possibly combined with an autoimmune condition like lupus. We needed more blood work and additional tests to confirm the diagnosis, but he assured me that what I was experiencing was very real and not uncommon in women my age. Fibromyalgia can be debilitating, Dr. Peterson explained. The pain is real, the fatigue is real, and it's not something you can just push through with willpower. You'll need to make some lifestyle adjustments and possibly start medication to manage the symptoms. I felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that there was a name for what I was experiencing and that I wasn't imagining things. Fear about what this diagnosis meant for my future and my ability to take care of myself. And unfortunately, Marcus. I called Marcus from the medical center parking lot, hoping that a potential diagnosis might help him understand what I'd been going through. "The doctor thinks I have fibromyalgia," I told him. "It's a chronic pain condition that explains the fatigue and joint pain I've been experiencing." His response was immediate and dismissive. "Mom, you're fine. Stop being so dramatic. These doctors just want to give everyone a fancy name for being tired. You need to stop focusing on every little ache and pain. I don't have time for this hypochondria right now." I sat in my car after that phone call, staring at the medical center building and feeling more alone than I had since Robert died. My own son, the person I'd devoted my adult life to raising and supporting, couldn't offer even basic empathy when I was facing a potentially life-changing health diagnosis. I drove home slowly, dreading the evening ahead. I was exhausted from the medical appointments, emotionally drained from Marcus's lack of support, and physically depleted from managing chronic pain all day. All I wanted was to rest, maybe have a quiet dinner, and process what I'd learned about my health condition. When I walked through the front door at 6 o'clock, Marcus was sprawled on the living room couch, watching television. He looked up as I entered, and his first words weren't asking about my doctor's appointment or how I was feeling. Instead, he said, "What's for dinner? I told Sarah you'd make your famous lasagna tonight. She's coming over in an hour." I stood there, holding my purse and the papers from the medical center, processing what he'd just said. He'd invited his girlfriend over for dinner and promised her a complicated time-consuming meal without checking with me first. On a day when I'd been dealing with medical appointments and trying to get answers about a chronic illness. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I really don't feel well enough to cook tonight. Can you order pizza or take Sarah out to dinner instead?" His response will stay with me for the rest of my life. He looked at me with genuine annoyance and said, "Stop faking it, Mom. You've been using this sick act to get attention for months. Just make the damn lasagna. It's not like you have anything else to do anyway." In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The son I'd raised, the child I'd sacrificed for the young man I'd supported financially and emotionally for 28 years, had just accused me of faking a chronic illness for attention. Standing in my own living room, holding medical papers, confirming my condition, I was being told by my own child that my pain wasn't real. I stood in that living room for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, letting Marcus's words sink in. The medical papers in my hand suddenly felt heavier, like they were evidence in a trial where my own son was both judge and jury, and he'd already declared me guilty of deception. The house was quiet, except for the television and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and for the first time saw him clearly. This wasn't the grieving 20-year-old who'd lost his father and needed extra support. This was a 28-year-old man who had grown comfortable treating his mother like hired help, someone whose feelings and needs didn't matter as long as his were met. I thought about Robert in that moment, about what he would say if he could see this scene. He'd always worried that I was too soft with Marcus, too quick to give in to his demands. "Estelle," he'd say, "love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes love means teaching difficult lessons." I closed my eyes and could almost hear Robert's voice. "Don't ever let anyone, not even our son, treat you as less than you are. You're worth more than being taken for granted." When I opened my eyes, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity, purpose, strength I didn't know I still possessed. I walked slowly to the stairs, each step deliberate. Despite the pain in my joints, Marcus called after me, "Mom, where are you going? Sarah will be here soon, and you haven't even started cooking." I didn't answer. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom and then continued to the small office where I'd been paying bills and managing household finances for years. I sat down at the desk where Robert used to work on his engineering projects and opened my laptop. My fingers moved across the keyboard with more energy than I'd felt in weeks. I opened a new document and started typing. Notice of financial independence requirement. The words appeared on the screen, and with each letter, I felt more certain that this was exactly what needed to happen. I spent the next 45 minutes crafting the most important document I'd ever written. It wasn't born from anger or revenge, but from love. The kind of love that recognizes when helping someone has turned into enabling them, when protection has become imprisonment for both the protector and the protected. I pulled out the filing cabinet and gathered financial documents, bank statements showing the monthly transfers to Marcus's checking account, credit card bills for his gas, food, and entertainment expenses. The insurance policies where I'd kept him covered long past when most parents would have transitioned that responsibility to their adult children. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 6 years, I'd spent nearly $180,000 supporting Marcus's lifestyle: college tuition, living expenses, car payments, insurance, medical bills, and countless other costs that he'd never had to consider because Mom always handled them. I calculated what this meant in practical terms. If Marcus had been responsible for his own expenses since graduation, I would have been able to save enough money for a comfortable early retirement. Instead, I was working full-time while managing a chronic illness, all to support an adult child who showed no appreciation and no motivation to become self-sufficient. As I worked on the document, I could hear Marcus downstairs getting increasingly agitated. He was probably wondering why I wasn't in the kitchen preparing his promised lasagna. The old Estelle would have rushed downstairs, apologizing for being selfish, and immediately starting dinner despite her exhaustion and pain. But the woman sitting at this desk was different. She was someone who had spent 28 years giving everything and receiving criticism in return. Someone who had just been told by her own son that her documented medical condition was fake and attention-seeking performance. I printed the document on good paper, folded it carefully, and placed it in one of the cream-colored envelopes I used for special occasions. On the front, I wrote Marcus in my best handwriting. Then I went to my bedroom and changed clothes. Instead of the work outfit I'd worn to the medical center, I put on a dress I hadn't worn in months, one that Robert had always said made my eyes look beautiful. I brushed my hair, applied a little makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the tired, defeated person who'd been stumbling through the house for months. This was someone who had made a decision and was prepared to follow through with it, regardless of the consequences. I could hear voices downstairs. Sarah must have arrived. Perfect timing. I made my way down to the kitchen, moving with more purpose than I'd felt in months. The pain in my joints was still there, but it seemed manageable now that I had a clear plan of action. I could hear Marcus and Sarah talking in the living room, and I caught snippets of their conversation as I began my preparations. "She should be starting dinner soon," Marcus was saying. "My mom makes this incredible lasagna. It takes forever, but it's worth the wait." "Is she feeling better?" Sarah asked. "You mentioned she hasn't been well lately." "Oh, that," Marcus replied dismissively. "She's been having some kind of health drama for months. The doctors can't find anything wrong with her, so I think it's mostly in her head. You know how some women get when they hit a certain age?" I paused in the kitchen doorway, holding the envelope with Marcus's future in it, and listened to my son casually dismiss my health struggles to his girlfriend. There was no concern in his voice, no empathy, just mild annoyance that his mother's illness was inconveniencing his social life. Sarah's response surprised me. "That doesn't sound like drama, Marcus. If she's been to multiple doctors, there's probably something real going on. Maybe you should be more supportive." "Trust me," Marcus said with a laugh. "I know my mother. She's always been dramatic about health stuff. Remember when she thought she had a heart attack last year? It turned out to be heartburn. Actually, it had been a panic attack, triggered by stress from work and worry about Marcus's future, but I'd never corrected his version of events. Standing there listening to him mock my medical concerns to his girlfriend, I realized how many times I'd let his dismissive comments slide to keep peace in the house. I walked into the dining room and began setting the table with our good china, the set Robert and I had received as a wedding gift 30 years earlier. I lit the candles we usually saved for holidays and arranged fresh flowers from the garden in the center of the table. If this was going to be Marcus's last dinner as my dependent, it should at least look special. Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking confused. "Mom, why are you using the fancy dishes? And where's the lasagna?" "Sarah's really looking forward to it. Dinner will be ready in just a few minutes," I said calmly, placing the envelope next to Marcus's plate. "Why don't you and Sarah come sit down?" "What's in the envelope?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying a note of suspicion. "Your dinner," I replied, continuing to arrange the table settings. "The most important meal I've ever served you." Sarah joined us looking lovely in a simple blue dress. She was a sweet girl, about 26 years old, who worked as a kindergarten teacher. I'd always liked her and wondered what she saw in Marcus, who seemed content to drift through life without ambition or responsibility. Now I was beginning to understand that she probably saw potential in him that others, including his own mother, had failed to develop. "The table looks beautiful, Mrs. Morrison," Sarah said warmly. "Those flowers from your garden are gorgeous." "Thank you, dear. Please, both of you sit down." I retreated to the kitchen and prepared our actual dinner. 3 simple sandwiches, a fresh salad, and glasses of iced tea. Not the elaborate lasagna Marcus had promised his girlfriend, but honest food that didn't require me to stand for hours while managing chronic pain. When I brought the plates to the dining room, Marcus's face showed his confusion and growing irritation. "Mom, these are just sandwiches. Where's the real dinner? I told Sarah you were making lasagna." "The real dinner is in the envelope," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Open it, Marcus." Sarah looked between us, clearly sensing the tension, but unsure what was happening. Marcus picked up the envelope with obvious reluctance, tore it open, and began reading the document inside. I watched his face change as he processed the words. Confusion gave way to disbelief, then to anger. His cheeks flushed red, and his hands started shaking slightly as he held the paper. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Some kind of joke. It's exactly what it says," I replied calmly. "Notice that our current financial arrangement will end 30 days from today. You have 30 days to find full-time employment and 60 days to find your own housing. After that, you'll be responsible for all your own expenses." "Mom, you can't be serious. I'm your son." "You're absolutely right, Marcus. You're my 28-year-old son. And 20 minutes ago, that 28-year-old son told his sick mother to stop faking her illness and cook dinner for his girlfriend." Sarah's eyes widened as she began to understand the situation. She reached for Marcus's hand, but he pulled away, too focused on his anger to notice her support. Marcus stared at the document for several more seconds, reading it again, as if the words might change. When he looked up, his face had gone from confused to furious. "You can't do this to me," he said, his voice getting louder. "This is my home, too. I've lived here my whole life." "Yes, you have," I agreed, cutting a bite of my sandwich. "For 28 years. Most people leave home by 22 or 23. You've had an extra 5 or 6 years to prepare for independence." "But Mom, I help around the house. I do things." I set down my fork and looked at him directly. "Marcus, when was the last time you cooked a meal for yourself, or did your own laundry, or paid for your own gas insurance or phone bill?" He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. "I work," he said defensively. "I have a job." You work 15 hours a week at the computer repair shop, I replied. That's not enough to support yourself, and you know it. You've been comfortable letting me subsidize your lifestyle because I've never asked you to do otherwise. Sarah finally spoke up. Marcus, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's time you started thinking about your future more seriously. Marcus turned to her with an expression of betrayal. Don't take her side. You don't understand the situation. I understand that your mother has been supporting you financially while dealing with health problems, and instead of being grateful or helpful, you've been dismissive and demanding, Sarah said quietly. I've seen how you talk to her, Marcus. It's not okay. I was impressed by Sarah's maturity and honesty. She was younger than Marcus, but seemed to have a much clearer understanding of appropriate adult behavior. Sarah, you don't know what you're talking about, Marcus snapped. My mother has been playing these health games for months. She's not really sick. I reached into my purse and pulled out the papers from my doctor's appointment. Actually, Marcus, I spent this afternoon getting test results. I have fibromyalgia, possibly combined with lupus. It's a chronic condition that causes the pain and fatigue I've been experiencing. I slid the medical documents across the table to him. These are real medical diagnoses from real doctors. What I've been going through isn't in my head, it's not for attention, and it's not going away. Marcus glanced at the papers, but pushed them back toward me without really reading them. Doctors give everyone some kind of diagnosis these days. It's probably just stress. You're right, I said. It probably is partly stress. The stress of working full-time to support 2 adults. The stress of managing a household by myself. The stress of watching my adult son show no motivation to build his own life. Sarah was reading the medical documents, her expression growing more serious. Marcus, these look like real medical conditions. Your mom isn't making this up. Whatever, Marcus said, but I could see uncertainty creeping into his expression. Even if she is sick, that doesn't mean she can just kick me out of my own home. This isn't your home, Marcus, I said gently. This is my home. You've been welcome here as my dependent child, but you're not a child anymore. It's time for you to build your own home, your own life. I pulled out another sheet of paper, this one showing a detailed breakdown of his expenses over the past 6 years. I've calculated what I've spent supporting you since you graduated college. Nearly $180,000. That's enough money for a down payment on a house, Marcus. Instead, I've been working every day to fund your lifestyle while my own health deteriorated. Marcus stared at the numbers, and for the first time, I saw something other than anger in his expression. Maybe it was the beginning of understanding, or maybe just shock at seeing the total amount spelled out so clearly. I never asked you to support me, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You didn't ask directly. I agreed, but you accepted it. Every month, when I transferred money to your account, every time I paid your insurance or covered your expenses, you accepted it without question or gratitude. You started treating my support as an entitlement rather than a gift. Sarah looked uncomfortable, clearly realizing she was witnessing a family crisis. Maybe I should leave and let you 2 work this out. No, I said. Please stay, Sarah. You're important to Marcus, and you should understand what's happening. This isn't about punishment or anger. This is about love. Marcus laughed bitterly. Love? You're throwing me out of the house. That's love. Yes, I said simply. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes love means letting someone struggle so they can learn to be strong. I've been protecting you from consequences for so long that you've forgotten how to protect yourself. I looked at my son, this young man I'd raised and loved and worried about for 28 years, and felt a mix of sadness and hope. Sadness for the years we'd both lost, while I enabled his dependence and hope that this shock might finally motivate him to discover his own capabilities. "I believe in you, Marcus," I said. "I believe you can build a good life for yourself. But I can't keep building it for you while you criticize my efforts and dismiss my needs. That's not healthy for either of us." The silence that followed was thick with tension and unspoken emotions. Marcus sat staring at the financial breakdown, his anger gradually giving way to something that looked like comprehension. Sarah reached for his hand again, and this time he didn't pull away. "But where am I supposed to go?" Marcus asked, and for the first time in years, I heard vulnerability in his voice instead of entitlement. "I can't afford an apartment on what I make at the computer shop." "Then you'll need to find better employment," I said. "You have a degree in computer engineering, Marcus. You're intelligent and capable. The only thing that's been holding you back is the comfort of knowing you didn't have to try very hard because I would always be there to catch you. What if I can't find a good job in 30 days? Then you'll find a temporary job while you look for a better one," I replied. "You'll do what millions of young people do every year. You'll figure it out." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Marcus, you're smart and talented. You've just never had to use those qualities because things have been too easy. Maybe this is exactly what you need." Marcus looked at her, then back at me. "Are you really serious about this? You're not going to change your mind?" I thought about that question carefully before answering. "Marcus, 3 hours ago, you told me I was faking a chronic illness for attention. You ordered me to cook an elaborate dinner for your girlfriend, despite knowing I was exhausted and in pain. You've been living in my house, eating my food, and using my money for 6 years, while showing no gratitude and no motivation to become independent. Yes, I'm serious." He was quiet for several minutes, picking at his sandwich. When he finally spoke again, his voice was softer. "I didn't mean what I said about you faking being sick. I was just frustrated. I appreciate that, Marcus, but this isn't about one conversation. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been developing for years. You've gotten comfortable taking my support for granted and treating me as if my only purpose is to serve your needs." Sarah had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. "Mrs. Morrison, what happened to make you decide to do this today? I mean, why now?" I considered her question. "Honestly, Sarah, it was hearing Marcus dismiss my medical diagnosis to you earlier. Sitting in that medical center today, getting confirmation that my pain and exhaustion are real, and then coming home to have my own son tell me I'm making it all up for attention. Something broke inside me, but in a good way. It broke the part of me that was willing to accept being treated poorly in my own home." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I heard what I said earlier. I'm sorry about that. I know you are, and I accept your apology. But sorry isn't enough anymore, Marcus. I need to see change, and I've learned that change doesn't happen when people are comfortable with the status quo." Over the next hour, we talked through the practical details. Marcus would have 30 days to secure full-time employment. During that time, he could continue living in the house, but he would start paying for his own food, gas, and personal expenses. After 30 days, he would begin paying me $400 per month for room and board. After 60 days, he needed to move out completely. "What about my stuff?" he asked. "My furniture, my computer setup. Anything you bought with your own money is yours to take," I said. "Anything I bought belongs to me. You can continue using my furniture until you move out, but you'll need to furnish your own place." Sarah was taking notes on her phone. I can help you look for apartments, she told Marcus. And there are websites for finding roommates if you need to share expenses at first. You'd do that? Marcus asked, looking surprised. Of course, Sarah said. This is going to be good for you, Marcus. You're going to learn things about yourself that you never knew. As the evening went on, I watched Marcus's attitude slowly shift. The anger and indignation were fading, replaced by what looked like the beginning of acceptance. Maybe even the first stirrings of determination. Will you help me with my resume? He asked eventually. I haven't updated it since college, and I'm not sure how to explain the past 6 years. I'd be happy to help with your resume, I said, and I'll provide excellent references for your character and abilities. This isn't about me wanting to see you fail, Marcus. This is about me wanting to see you succeed on your own terms. When Sarah left around 9 o'clock, she hugged me goodbye. Thank you, she whispered in my ear. He needed this, even if he doesn't understand it yet. After she was gone, Marcus and I sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, working on his resume and searching job websites. It was the most productive conversation we'd had in years, focused on his future instead of his immediate comfort. Mom, he said, as we were closing the laptop, I want you to know that I'm going to prove you right about me. I'm going to show you that I can take care of myself. I already know you can, I replied. I've always known. I just forgot that knowing and showing are two different things. That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply and peacefully. The ache in my joints was still there, but the weight on my heart was finally beginning to lift. The next 2 weeks brought changes I couldn't have imagined. Marcus threw himself into job searching with an energy and focus I hadn't seen since his college years. He updated his resume, created profiles on professional networking sites, and started applying for positions that actually matched his education and abilities. More importantly, his attitude toward me began to shift. He started asking about my doctor appointments instead of dismissing them. When I had a particularly difficult pain day, he actually offered to cook dinner or help with household tasks. It was as if forcing him to consider his own future had opened his eyes to the reality of my situation. I never realized how much you do around here, he said one evening as he attempted to do his own laundry. I mean, I knew you cooked and cleaned, but I didn't really think about what that meant when you're not feeling well. I've been managing everything for so long that it became invisible, I replied. To both of us. Sarah became a frequent presence in our house during this transition period, and I grew to appreciate her even more. She was supportive, but honest with Marcus, encouraging his job search while refusing to enable his old patterns of behavior. I won't date someone who doesn't have their life together, she told him directly. I'm not looking for a project or someone to take care of. I want a partner. This was apparently the motivation Marcus needed more than anything I could have said. Within 10 days of receiving his independence notice, he had 3 job interviews scheduled. The first 2 didn't result in offers, but they gave him practice and confidence. The third interview was with a software development company that specialized in financial systems. They want someone who can work with banks and credit unions, Marcus explained excitedly after the interview. I told them about your experience in banking, and they were impressed that I understood the financial industry from a family perspective. He got the job. Full-time, good salary, health benefits, and room for advancement. His start date was exactly 25 days after I'd served him his independence notice. I can't believe I'm saying this. Marcus told me the night before his first day, but I'm actually excited about working. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm going to be doing something that matters. Work is different when it's your choice and your responsibility, I said. When someone else is supporting you, even a job you like can feel optional. When you're supporting yourself, work becomes meaningful. True to our agreement, Marcus started paying me $400 per month for room and board as soon as he received his first paycheck. But even more significantly, he started contributing to household tasks without being asked. He took over grocery shopping on weekends, cooked dinner twice a week, and actually cleaned his own room regularly. "I'm starting to understand something," he said one Saturday morning as we worked together to clean the house. "Taking care of yourself and your space isn't just about the work itself. It's about self-respect." "What do you mean?" "I mean, when someone else is always cleaning up after you, it sends a message that your time is more valuable than theirs, but also that you're not capable of taking care of yourself. I don't want to be that person anymore." 6 weeks after the independence notice, Marcus found a small apartment about 15 minutes away from both his job and my house. It was a one-bedroom place in a complex with other young professionals, nothing fancy, but clean and safe, with amenities like a gym and a pool. "I want you to see it before I sign the lease," he said. "I want to make sure you approve." "Marcus, you don't need my approval. This is your decision." "I know I don't need it," he said, "but I want it. Your opinion matters to me, and I want you to be proud of the choice I'm making." The apartment was perfect for him, small enough to be affordable, but large enough for him to feel independent. He'd already calculated his budget carefully, planning for rent, utilities, groceries, and savings. For the first time in his adult life, he was thinking ahead instead of just coasting through the present. "How do you feel about living alone?" I asked as we toured the empty space. "Nervous," he admitted, "but good nervous. Like I'm finally going to find out what I'm actually capable of." Moving day was emotional for both of us. As we loaded his belongings into the rented truck, I felt a mix of sadness and pride that reminded me of dropping him off for his first day of kindergarten. I was sad to see him go, but proud of how far he'd come. "Thank you," Marcus said as we stood in my driveway after the truck was loaded. "I know this was hard for you too. I know you didn't want to force me out. But I needed it, didn't I? You needed the opportunity to discover your own strength," I said. "I'd been protecting you from that opportunity without realizing it. I want you to know that I understand now about your health, about what you've been going through. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." 2 months later, Marcus called me with news that took our relationship to a completely new level. He'd been promoted at work to a senior developer position, and he wanted to take me out to dinner to celebrate. The restaurant Marcus chose was elegant, but comfortable, the kind of place Robert and I used to go for special occasions. As we settled into our booth, I marveled at the transformation in my son. He looked confident, purposeful, and genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child with big dreams about his future. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said after we'd ordered. "Sarah and I are getting engaged." My heart filled with joy, both for his happiness and for the maturity this decision represented. "Marcus, that's wonderful. Have you proposed yet?" "Next weekend. I've been saving money for a ring, and I finally have enough for something she'll really love. But here's the thing, Mom. I want to do this right. I want to ask for her father's blessing plan, something special, and build a marriage based on partnership and mutual respect." "That sounds perfect. I learned something important from what happened between us," he continued. "A relationship can't be healthy when one person is doing all the giving and the other person is doing all the taking. I never want Sarah to feel the way I made you feel. We talked about his proposal plans, his career goals, and his hopes for the future. But the conversation that meant the most to me came near the end of the evening. How are you doing, Mom, really, with your health and everything? I'm managing well, I said honestly. I've learned to pace myself better, and I'm on medication that helps with the pain and fatigue. But the biggest improvement has been in my stress level. Not having to worry about supporting two people has made a huge difference. I never realized how much stress I was adding to your life, Marcus said quietly. I thought I was just living at home, but I was actually creating more work and worry for you every single day. You weren't doing it intentionally, I said. But yes, the constant caregiving was exhausting, especially when I was dealing with health problems. Taking care of myself has become so much easier now that it's just myself I need to consider. Are you lonely, though, living alone after having me around for so many years? I thought about that question carefully. Sometimes, I admitted, but it's a peaceful kind of solitude. I'm not lonely in the way I was when you were living at home, but we weren't really connecting. Now, when we spend time together, it's because we both choose to be here. That makes it much more meaningful. Marcus nodded. I feel the same way. I look forward to our dinners and phone calls now because they're about spending quality time together, not about me needing something from you. As we were leaving the restaurant, Marcus handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a check made out to me for $5,000. Marcus, what is this for? It's the beginning of paying you back, he said. I've calculated that I can afford to pay you $400 a month toward the money you spent supporting me over the years. It'll take a long time to repay the full amount, but I want you to know that I understand it was a gift, not an obligation. I was so moved that I started crying right there in the restaurant parking lot. Marcus, you don't owe me that money. Supporting you was my choice as your mother, and paying you back is my choice as your son, he replied. You sacrificed your own financial security to give me opportunities I didn't even appreciate at the time. Let me return some of that security to you. 6 months later, I attended Marcus and Sarah's wedding. It was a beautiful ceremony that they planned and paid for themselves, and watching Marcus take responsibility for this major life decision filled me with more pride than anything he'd ever accomplished before. During the reception, Marcus gave a speech that brought tears to my eyes. I want to thank my mother, he said, for loving me enough to let me struggle. A year ago, I thought love meant making life easy for someone. Now, I know that real love means helping someone become the person they're meant to be, even when that's hard for everyone involved. In the years since Marcus moved out, my health has stabilized significantly. The stress reduction has been remarkable, and I've been able to manage my fibromyalgia symptoms much more effectively. I've also rediscovered interests and friendships that had been neglected during the years when caregiving consumed so much of my energy. I joined a support group for people with chronic pain conditions, and I've made wonderful friends who understand the daily challenges I face. I've also started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was managing Marcus's life along with my own. Marcus calls me twice a week now, not because he needs anything, but because he wants to check on me and share what's happening in his life. Our relationship is closer now than it ever was when he lived at home, built on mutual respect rather than dependence. Last month, Marcus and Sarah invited me to dinner at their apartment to share some news. They're expecting their first child, and Marcus is already thinking seriously about the kind of father he wants to be. I want to be loving and supportive, he told me, but I also want to raise a child who grows up to be independent and self-sufficient. I want our kids to know they're loved unconditionally, but also that love doesn't mean a life without expectations or consequences. You're going to be a wonderful father, I told him, and I meant it completely. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the way I handled Marcus's independence. Did I wait too long? Was I too harsh? Should I have been more gradual in my approach? I don't regret any of it. That night, when I served him papers instead of lasagna, wasn't about punishment or anger. It was about love expressing itself in the only way that could actually help him become the man he was meant to be. The greatest gift a parent can give a child isn't a life without struggle, but the tools and confidence to handle whatever struggles life brings. For 28 years, I thought I was protecting Marcus from hardship. Instead, I was protecting him from growth. Today, when Marcus calls me, it's not to ask what's for dinner. It's to ask how I'm feeling, to share something exciting about his work, or to get my advice about a decision he's making. He calls because he wants to, not because he needs to, and that has made all the difference. The best meal I ever served wasn't something I cooked. It was a document that taught my son to feed himself, not just with food, but with purpose, pride, and the deep satisfaction that comes from building your own life with your own hands. That night, I thought I was serving my son papers, but really, I was serving both of us freedom. What I learned is that sometimes saying no to someone you love is the most loving thing you can do. That helping can become hurting if it goes on too long, and that the strongest foundation for any relationship, even between mother and son, is mutual respect and shared responsibility. If you've ever found yourself giving so much that you've lost yourself, I want you to know that it's never too late to reclaim your worth. If you've ever wondered whether setting boundaries with someone you love makes you selfish, it doesn't. It makes you wise. Love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes, love means serving papers instead of dinner and trusting that the people we care about are stronger than we've been allowing them to be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to make a tough love decision with someone close to you? How did you find the courage to set boundaries when it felt like the hardest thing in the world? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult moments, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to put themselves first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that the most powerful thing you can teach someone is that they're capable of taking care of themselves. Sometimes that lesson comes wrapped in kindness, and sometimes it comes wrapped in consequences, but it always comes wrapped in love.